Zuwaira was the kind of woman everyone liked. Gentle, humble, and full of dreams. She worked long hours as a seamstress in a small shop tucked between the noisy streets of Lagos. Her fingers were always busy, stitching, hemming, ironing, but her heart stayed soft. She believed in love, in good people, and in the kind of happy ending you see in Nollywood movies. So when she met Kelechi, everything in her world changed. Kelechi was nothing like the men she was used to. He was confident, dressed in fine clothes, drove a sleek black car, and spoke with the kind of calm that made you feel safe. He noticed her, not just her face or her shape, but the way she carried herself. He called her queen from the very first week, brought her lunch at her shop, bought her new sewing machines, promised her that her struggling days were over, and she believed him. Who wouldn't? They didn't have a big wedding, just a small traditional one with family, food, and blessings. She wore a jewel her aunt tied for her, and he held her hand like it was gold. "You'll never suffer again," he whispered in her ear that day. She smiled through tears, thinking her prayers had been answered. A few weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. Her joy couldn't be contained. She started sewing baby clothes with trembling hands, talking to her belly every morning like it was a little secret between her and God. She dreamed of a warm home, laughter-filled dinners, and a future with love written in every corner. But something started to change. Kelechi stopped coming home early. He stopped picking her calls. No more flowers, no more lunch visits, no more gentle words. When he did speak, his voice was sharp, like a knife. He would sigh when she asked simple questions. He'd roll his eyes. Once, she tried to hold his hand, and he pulled away like her touch burned him. At first, she blamed herself. Maybe she was too emotional. Maybe pregnancy was making her too clingy. She tried to fix it, cooked his favorite meals, wore makeup even when she felt sick, kept the house spotless. But it didn't matter. Kelechi had already left her heart, even though he still lived in the same house. One night, she stood in the kitchen, barefoot, holding a plate of his food he didn't touch. Her stomach was starting to show, round and full of hope, but her eyes, they were tired. She looked at the empty seat across the table and whispered, "You promised me everything. Why did you take it all away?" She didn't know it yet, but the worst was still coming. Zuwaira had always believed that love meant staying, even when things got hard. She thought if she just held on a little longer, Kelechi would come back to the man she first met, the one who called her queen and kissed her forehead like it was something sacred. But things only got worse. By the time she was 5 months pregnant, everything had changed. Kelechi barely looked at her anymore. He would come home late, sometimes smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. He would glance at her growing belly with a strange mix of annoyance and distance. One night, as she tried to ask if he was okay, he exploded. "You're too much to handle," he snapped. "You're always in my space, always wanting something. It's like you've turned into a different person, clingy, needy. I didn't sign up for this." Zuwaira stood there, frozen. Her hands rested on her belly, as if trying to shield the baby from the words. She wanted to scream, to remind him that she didn't get pregnant alone, that she had left her small, quiet life for him. But all she could manage was a quiet, "I'm sorry," even though she hadn't done anything wrong. The days that followed felt cold, even under the hot Lagos sun. Kelechi barely spoke to her. He stayed out for nights without calling. And then, one morning, he was just gone. No note, no goodbye, no explanation. She woke up and found the house silent. His clothes were gone. His phone was switched off. Just the keys were left on the table. It was as if he had erased himself from her life overnight. Zuwaira sat on the edge of the bed for hours, waiting, hoping, praying that maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he'd walk in any minute with a silly excuse and a tired smile. But the silence stayed. Her heart broke in a way she didn't think was possible. Not just because she was left alone, but because she was left alone while carrying a life inside her. She would talk to the baby at night, whispering soft words through her tears. "Don't worry, my love. I'm still here. I won't leave you." The house they had just moved into, the one he had promised would be their home, now felt like a prison of memories. Every corner reminded her of a dream that had shattered. The kitchen where they planned baby names. The living room where he once held her and told her she was enough. Days turned into weeks, and still no word from Kelechi. No one knew where he had gone. Some said he travelled. Others said he had moved on with someone else. But Zuwaira stopped listening. She had to, because if she didn't, the pain would crush her completely. She had never felt more alone in her life. But even in the darkness, Something inside her, maybe it was the baby, maybe it was her own strength, kept whispering, "Keep going." So she did, slowly, quietly. With a heart full of cracks and a belly full of life, Zuwaira stood up and began to survive. Zuwaira was tired, not just in her body, but deep in her soul. Every morning felt heavier than the last. The baby inside her was growing, but so was the emptiness around her. Kelechi was still gone. The house felt colder each day, and the silence was starting to scream. Some days, she barely ate. Other days, she didn't get out of bed at all. She was trying to be strong, but truthfully, she was drowning. One afternoon, with nothing but a few naira in her pocket, Zuwaira forced herself out. She walked aimlessly through the streets of Lagos, her feet aching, her back sore, her eyes swollen from crying. She just needed to breathe, to feel something that wasn't pain. She ended up near a bridge, one she'd passed many times before but never paid attention to. This time, something made her stop. Maybe it was the small cry of a child, or maybe it was the way the wind felt against her skin. She looked down and saw them. A woman sitting on the cold concrete floor, her back against the wall, holding a sleeping baby. Beside her was a little boy, not older than 5, barefoot and playing with a piece of old plastic. They had nothing, no mattress, no bag, no food, just a torn blanket and each other. Zuwaira's heart clenched. She stood there for a few seconds, unsure what to do. Then she walked over slowly. The woman looked up, cautious but calm. Her eyes were sharp, like someone who had seen too much. But there was no anger there, just exhaustion. "Are you okay?" Zuwaira asked softly, even though she knew the answer. The woman gave a small nod. "We're surviving," she said. Zuwaira opened her bag and took out the small rice pack she had planned to eat later. Without thinking, she handed it over, along with a bottle of water. She also removed her scarf, the only warm thing she had with her, and gently placed it over the baby. The woman stared at her, surprised. No words, just a quiet look that said, "Thank you," without sound. "My name is Zuwaira," she said. "I'm Ijoke," the woman replied. They didn't talk much that day. They just sat side by side. Two women who had lost everything. One abandoned by the man she loved, the other forgotten by a world that didn't care. And yet, in that silence, something beautiful began to grow. A kind of sisterhood. One born not out of blood, but out of shared pain. Over the next few days, Zuwaira kept coming back. Some bread one day, a warm flask of tea another. She didn't have much, but what she had, she gave. And Ijoke, in return, gave her something she didn't even know she needed. Company, understanding, strength. They laughed sometimes, even in the middle of nothing. And when Zuwaira's baby kicked for the first time, Ijoke was the one who placed her hand on her belly and said, "That's life. That's hope." In a world that had taken so much from both of them, they found a tiny corner where they could breathe together. Zuwaira went into labor on a rainy Tuesday morning. The sky was grey, the streets wet, and everything felt heavy. She was alone in the hospital room, gripping the edge of the bed, breathing through the pain. No family, no husband, just her and the baby she had carried through heartbreak, hunger, and silent nights. After hours of labor, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, tiny, warm, and perfect. As the nurse placed the baby in her arms, Zuwaira wept, not just from the pain, but from the overwhelming wave of love and sadness crashing over her. She had imagined this moment so differently. She had imagined Kelechi beside her, holding her hand, whispering, "We did it." But instead, the door opened and brought with it something else entirely. Kelechi walked in, dressed sharply, holding a brown envelope in his hand. No flowers, no smile, no congratulations, just cold eyes and a stack of divorce papers. He didn't even look at the baby. Zuwaira didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She didn't even speak. She just looked at the paper, took the pen he offered, and signed her name. Her hands were steady, even though her heart felt like it was cracking again. As he turned to leave, she whispered, "She deserves better than this." Kelechi paused for a second, but said nothing. Then he walked out, just like he had months ago, leaving silence in his place. A few days later, Zuwaira was discharged from the hospital. Ijoke came to pick her up, carrying the baby bag like it was her own. Her 2 kids stood beside her, excited to see the new baby. They all walked back together, a strange little family stitched together by pain, love, and fate. That evening, Zuwaira stood outside the house, the same house Kelechi left her in, the same house that had witnessed her loneliness. She looked at Ijoke, then at her kids, and smiled softly. "I want you to have it," she said, handing over the keys. A joke froze. "What? This house? It needs laughter. It needs life. It needs children running through the halls and someone cooking stew in the kitchen. Let it finally be a home." A neighbor watching from their window recorded the moment. Zuwaira, holding her baby, placing the keys into Ajoke's hands, and hugging her like a sister. The video hit social media that same night. People were stunned. A woman who had every reason to be bitter had chosen love instead. She gave away her home to someone who had nothing, even when she herself had just lost everything. In a world full of selfishness and pain, her act felt like a soft, bright light, something pure, something powerful. And before long, people started to say her name, not just in pity, but in admiration. Zuwaira didn't know it yet, but her story was only beginning. Karma doesn't knock. It doesn't send a warning. It just comes, quiet, sharp, and when you least expect it. After the video of Zuwaira handing over her house to Ajoke went viral, the internet exploded. People shared it everywhere, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. The comments poured in by the thousands. "This woman is gold. She chose love instead of revenge. We don't deserve people like her." But while Zuwaira was being lifted up by the world, Kelechi's life began to fall apart. At first, he didn't even notice. He ignored the video, laughed it off, even mocked it with his friends. But then the calls stopped coming. His clients pulled out of deals. People who once respected him now gave him cold looks. Turns out the world had been watching, and they didn't like what they saw. His company didn't want the bad press. "You humiliated your pregnant wife and left her," one board member said in a meeting. "That's not the kind of man we want representing us." A week later, he was fired. His new girlfriend, gone. She packed her things, left a short note on the table. "If you can do that to her, you'll do it to me too." Kelechi tried to fight it, called old contacts, begged for favors. Nothing worked. His name was now tied to shame. The man who once walked with pride and power was now just small. Meanwhile, Zuwaira's life began to glow. A popular Lagos radio station invited her for an interview. At first, she didn't want to go. She didn't like attention, but a joke encouraged her. "People need to hear your story," she said, and they did. Her soft voice filled the airwaves as she talked about pain, survival, motherhood, and choosing kindness when hate was easier. By the next day, business emails started coming in. A fabric company offered to sponsor her. A woman in London donated money to help her start her own tailoring shop. Someone else sent baby supplies for an entire year. It was like the world had wrapped its arms around her and whispered, "We see you." But what touched her most weren't the gifts or offers. It was the messages from other women. Women who said, "You gave me hope. You reminded me I'm not alone. Because of you, I kept going." Zuwaira never planned to become a symbol. She just followed her heart. She gave when she had little. She stayed kind when she had every reason not to. And now people were following her lead. Her life wasn't perfect. She still had tough days. But something inside her had shifted. She was no longer just surviving. She was rising. And somewhere in the city, as Kelechi scrolled through the same video that ruined him, he finally understood. He lost more than a woman. He lost a queen. Zuwaira could have just moved on with her life. She had every right to. She had a new tailoring business, people supporting her, and her beautiful baby girl growing stronger every day. But something in her heart wouldn't let her forget the nights she cried alone. The hunger, the fear, the cold silence. She remembered how it felt to be forgotten, and she couldn't leave other women behind in that place. So she did something bold. With the help of donations and support from kind strangers, she opened a small shelter, a place for women like her. She called it Second Womb. "It's where we get to be born again," she told the first group of women who walked through its doors, "where pain ends and healing begins." The shelter wasn't fancy. The beds were simple, the paint still smelled fresh, and the walls were filled with donated baby clothes, pots and books. But it had something more important than luxury. It had love. It had safety. It had hope. Zuwaira didn't do it alone. Ajoke was right there beside her. The woman who once slept under a bridge was now managing the shelter with pride. She ran the kitchen, helped the children with their homework, and always made sure there was a warm bowl of food for every mother who walked in scared and broken. Together they built something beautiful out of the pieces life tried to break. Women came in with black eyes, swollen feet, broken hearts, girls with babies on their hips and tears in their eyes. Some were kicked out by their families, others abused by lovers or strangers, and every single one of them was welcomed with open arms and soft voices that said, "You are safe here." One day, Zuwaira walked into the small common room and found a young mother sitting in a corner, holding her baby and crying quietly. Her face was bruised, her body shaking. Zuwaira sat beside her, didn't say anything at first, just gently rubbed her back. "They all left me," the girl sobbed, "even my own mother." Zuwaira looked at her, eyes full of understanding, and said the words that would later be printed on the shelter's wall. "Let them leave. We'll stay, and we'll rise." The girl cried harder, but this time she held Zuwaira's hand. That was what Second Womb was about: staying, holding, rising. Zuwaira never wanted to be famous. She just wanted to make sure no woman ever felt as alone as she once did. And now, every time a broken woman walked through those doors and left with her head held high, Zuwaira knew this was her purpose. She didn't just rise, she lifted others with her.